Today, tensions in the Middle East seem to be at an all-time high, with Israeli occupation of Palestine and Islamic extremist groups such as Hamas going at it. It may seem as though it all arose from an unprovoked attack on October 7th. But the truth is that the region has had a long-standing reputation throughout history for being at constant war, the fall of many empires, and for once being home to some of the earliest human civilizations known to man. So, let's take a look at the early origins of the region, and how things came to be in the state that they are in today. With some of the oldest and largest civilizations having existed within its boundaries, the region was no stranger to war and conflict in the 19th century and going into World War I. The Ottoman Empire was made up mostly of what is now the modern-day Middle East, and over the course of the war, allied themselves with the Central Powers. Throughout the course of the war, nationalist movements were beginning to breed within the empire, and the ethnic tensions were high. The Allied powers took advantage of this and backed different nationalist movements to weaken the empire. France supported Arab Catholics known as the Maronites. Britain backed Arab rebels in the Hashemite families under promises of their support for an independent Arab state in exchange for their help in fighting the Ottoman Empire. The promises between the Hashemites and the British can be observed in a series of letters exchanged between Sir Henry McMahon, the British High Commissioner in Egypt, and Sharif Hussein of Mecca during World War I, and the McMahon-Hussein correspondence, in which it was promised by McMahon that Britain would be prepared to recognize and support the independence of all Arabs in the region. The rebels were responsible for a number of key victories, like the Great Arab Revolt, which successfully captured many important territories from the Ottoman Empire, like Damascus. With combined military pressure and internal conflicts, the Ottoman Empire fell, and with its dissolution after the war, it was left to the Allied powers, mainly Britain and France, to divvy up the territories in the Sykes-Picot Agreement made between British and French diplomats, which had seen borders arbitrarily drawn in the region with no respect to ethnic conflict, religious differences, or feuding tribes. The agreement also notably disregarded Britain's promises made with the Hashemite family of an independent Arab nation-state, and saw Britain acquire the territories of Transjordan, Palestine, and Iraq. The borders would go on to be made official by the League of Nations, and these careless borders would become a major catalyst for much of the modern-day conflict in the region. With Great Britain's acquisition of Palestine, they would show early signs of support for the creation of a Jewish state over the land of Palestine. Arthur Balfour, Prime Minister of the UK and devout Protestant, would express in his 1919 book History of Zionism his belief in the importance of a Jewish state, which he described as being, and I quote, rooted in age-long traditions, in present needs, in future hopes, and of far profounder importance than the desires of 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit the ancient land. Arthur would later write the Balfour Declaration, expressing his intention to establish a Jewish state in the land of Palestine, and it was the first time in history that a major power would advocate for Zionism. In Balfour's letter, he wrote, "Nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine." The Balfour Declaration came as a shock to many Palestinians, who, similar to the Hashemite family, were promised independence once they helped Britain's effort to fight the Ottoman Empire. After the British mandate for Palestine was approved by the League of Nations, the British would go on to occupy Palestine for 30 years. In that time, they would oversee plans to establish a Jewish state in Palestine and would facilitate immigration into the country. Palestinians became increasingly upset with the establishment of Jewish communities over their own and the forceful displacement and evictions of Palestinians from their lands. Christian Palestinian writer George Antonius described the shared sense of resentment among Palestinians in his book The Arab Awakening, 1939, in which he wrote, "The Arabs had been promised by the British a national homeland in return for their support in the war against the Turks. They believed, with good reason, that they had a right to independence, but when the war ended, they found that they were still subjected to foreign rule, and their dreams of self-determination were shattered." In the pursuit of the establishment of a Jewish state, many Jewish militias, including the IOF, would use force to drive out the Palestinians by any means necessary. Despite this, British-supported Zionism would continue to spread throughout Palestine, and we see the formation of Arab nationalist groups to resist occupation. During their early years, most of them were civil groups that were advocating for a Palestinian national identity and for independence. They were often used as a platform to express dissent towards the British Zionist rule which they lived under. Groups like the Palestinian Arab Congress and the Arab Higher Committee were formed in response to the Zionist movement, protesting the Balfour Declaration and organizing boycotts against Zionist goods and general strikes with the goal of opposing Zionism. The Palestinian Arab Congress wrote in a closing statement in 1919, "We, the representatives of the people of Palestine, have come together to protest the injustice of the Balfour Declaration, which gives the land of Palestine to the Jewish people without any regard for the Arab population." Although the resistance to the Zionist movement started off as peaceful, years of oppression and settler colonial violence would cause these groups to evolve and take on a more active role in their resistance, laying the groundwork for more violent groups to take their place. After Israel declared its independence in 1948, they proceeded to displace 750,000 Palestinians in a mass ethnic cleansing campaign known as the Nakba. One such group before the Nakba was the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood, founded by Hassan al-Banna, which aimed to combat Western imperial values with Islamic values. The Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood started off as a social organization doing charitable work. They built mosques like the Islamic Center of Gaza, which became a hub for medical treatment, blood banks, daycare centers, youth clubs, and soup kitchens, and also built the Islamic University of Gaza. After the Nakba, they took a massive hit to their ranks, but continued to work in refugee camps. Not long after, they drew inspiration from the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, which shifted to become more politically active and Islamically radicalized. After the 1967 Six-Day War, the leading Palestinian resistance movement, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, suffered a major defeat and was thought to have collapsed, and the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood filled the position. From the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood was an offshoot known as the Islamic Resistance Movement, which you may know today as Hamas, founded by Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. They had grown tired of the Brotherhood's lack of results and were opposed to both Israeli occupation as well as secular resistance as a whole, including the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Founded in 1987, is actually a relatively new Palestinian resistance group which had emerged from decades upon decades of peaceful resistance groups taking too long to change material conditions. As we can see though, they aren't getting anywhere either and have only escalated the situation and made it far worse. In order to stop the endless violence and bloodshed, scholars have narrowed solutions down to two: a two-state solution and a one-state solution. A two-state solution would see East Jerusalem become the capital of Palestine, and would also entail the solidifying of territorial disputes such as Jerusalem, and would also need to find a way of supporting millions of Palestinians and enforcing Palestinian and Israeli sovereignty. A one-state solution is a little trickier because it faces the challenge of generations of bad blood and conflict between the two different groups of people it would be trying to merge under the same borders. In my personal opinion, if the one-state solution is decided on, it would be ideal. There would be no territorial losses for either side, and all citizens would have equal rights and protections under the law. Both solutions require much effort, compromise, and a whole lot of time before they become a reality. And while the road to healing ahead of us is a long one, it is still worth walking, and seeing a peaceful end to violent conflict is never impossible.